The wind came first. Before the snow, before the guests, before any of what I'm about to tell you, there was the wind. It came howling down through the Catskill passes like something unchained, rattling every window in the Pinecone Lodge hard enough that I had to check the putty on the old frames in the east wing. That was Friday morning, first weekend of February 2024, and I remember standing in the foyer with a mug of black coffee thinking, this is either going to be a hell of a weekend or a disaster. Turned out it was both. My name's Russell Teague. I'm 53. I've owned and operated this bed and breakfast for going on 11 years now, and I'll be honest with you, business hadn't exactly been booming. January was dead. December before that, mostly dead. So when I looked at my reservation book and saw 6 names lined up for the same Friday check-in, all arriving ahead of a massive nor'easter, I felt something I hadn't felt in a while. Gratitude, sure, but also that low hum of pressure you get when the house is going to be full and everything has to be right. I put a fresh batch of my apple cider on the stove, got both fireplaces going, and waited. Vivian Marsh arrived first around 2 in the afternoon. You smelled her before you saw her. Some French perfume that filled the entire foyer like it was staking a claim. She was mid-60s, draped in a coat with a fur-trimmed collar, and she carried a little cream-colored dog named Biscuit under one arm like a handbag. Retired opera singer, she told me, before I'd even handed her the room key. The Holmes came next. Derek and Sadie, young couple, maybe late 20s. Anniversary trip. He shook my hand too hard, the way guys do when they're trying to prove something to the woman standing next to them. She smiled a lot. They seemed happy enough, carried their own bags upstairs without asking for help. Felix Carver arrived in a rental car that barely made it up the drive. Big man, round spectacles, ruddy cheeks. A rare book dealer from somewhere in Connecticut, and the kind of person who fills a room just by walking into it. He laughed at the weather, laughed at the steep driveway, laughed when Biscuit growled at him from Vivian's arms. He was one of those people who makes you want to like them, and I mostly did. Noreen Pratt was the opposite. Thin, precise, unsmiling. She was a food critic for some regional magazine, here specifically to review my breakfast menu, which she informed me of in the first 90 seconds of conversation while producing a small leather notebook from her coat pocket. I said, "Well, I hope you like eggs," and she wrote something down. I decided not to think too hard about that. Last one in was Gideon Hale. He pulled up around 4:30, just as the first flurries started coming down serious. Silver-haired, quiet, moved like a man who was comfortable not being noticed. Said he was a bird watcher, up for the winter species. I showed him to his room, and he thanked me and closed the door, and that was about all I got out of him. 6 guests, full house. By evening, the snow was falling so thick you couldn't see the tree line from the porch. I served dinner in the great room at 7. Pot roast, roasted root vegetables, fresh bread. Both fireplaces were crackling. The cider was warm, and there was plenty of it. And I'll tell you, for a few hours there, it was exactly what I'd hoped it would be. Vivian told stories about performing in Vienna. Felix asked questions that made everyone feel interesting. Even Noreen set her notebook down long enough to take a second helping of the roasted carrots, which I quietly considered a victory. It was a good evening, genuinely good. But there was this one moment. I almost didn't catch it. I was clearing plates, moving between Felix's end of the table and where Gideon sat near the window, and I saw Felix glance up. Not at the room, not at whoever was talking, at Gideon. And Gideon, who'd barely said 10 words all night, looked right back at him. Just for a second. Neither of them said a thing. Neither of them acknowledged it afterward. It was the kind of look that means something or nothing, and I set it aside in my mind the way you set aside a sound you hear in the walls at night. Probably nothing. Probably the house settling. By 10 o'clock, the county had closed the mountain roads. I checked my phone, checked the weather report, and stepped out onto the porch just to see for myself. Snow up past the first step, wind gusting sideways, nothing but white in every direction. I went back inside, bolted the front door, and turned to face my full house. Nobody was going anywhere. Saturday morning, 5:30, and I'm in the kitchen doing what I've done 1,000 times, laying strips of smoked bacon across the cast iron, knuckles dusted white with flour, buttermilk pancake batter rising in the bowl. The lodge is dead quiet, except for the wind still hammering the north wall and the soft pop of rendered fat. Then Noreen Pratt screams, not a startled yelp, a scream, the kind that comes from the chest. I'm up the stairs before I've even thought about it, apron still on, leaving flowery handprints on the banister rail. Second floor hallway, and there's Noreen standing outside room 4 in her bathrobe, one hand pressed flat against her sternum like she's holding her own heart in place. Felix Carver's door is ajar. I push past her and step inside. Felix is slumped forward over the writing desk, his big ruddy cheek mashed against the wood, his glasses knocked crooked. For one terrible second, I think I'm looking at a dead man. I grab his wrist. Pulse. Slow but steady. He's breathing, shallow, almost mechanical, but his eyes don't flicker. His body doesn't respond when I say his name, shake his shoulder, say it again louder. He's out. Completely out. There's a cup of chamomile tea beside his elbow, half drunk, gone cold, and spread across the desk under his forearm are handwritten pages. Provenance records, I realize. Authentication documents for some rare book. The kind of thing a man like Felix, a dealer who'd spent Friday dinner telling us about first editions with the giddiness of a kid at Christmas, would stay up late, poring over. By now, Derek Holm is in the doorway, barefoot, hair wild from sleep. And then he says something I didn't expect. "I was an army medic. Let me look at him." I stepped aside. Derek checked Felix's pupils, his breathing rate, lifted his eyelids, and studied whatever he saw there. Then he straightened up and said, real quiet so Noreen wouldn't hear from the hall, "Somebody drugged him. That tea, something's in it. He's sedated, not sick." I felt the floor shift under me, not literally, but something in my understanding of where I was and what was happening tilted hard and didn't right itself. I tried the landline in the hall, dead. Storm took it in the night. My cell, nothing, not a single bar. The mountain road was still closed, the snow still falling sideways past every window. We were sealed in. Derek and I carried Felix to his bed, propped his head, covered him. I closed that door, locked it from the outside, and put the key in my pocket. 11 years I've run this lodge. I've handled frozen pipes at 3 in the morning, and a black bear in the garbage shed, and a guest who tried to fist-fight a coat rack after too much whiskey. You handle things. You secure what you can, and you keep your voice even, and you figure out the next step. The next step was breakfast. I went back downstairs, scraped the burned bacon, started a fresh batch. One by one, they all came down. Sadie and Derek. Vivian, with little biscuit tucked under her arm. Gideon Hale, silver hair combed neat, quiet as ever. I told them Felix was feeling unwell, that he was resting comfortably, that we'd keep an eye on him. I watched their faces as I said it. Gideon nodded once, slow, and reached for his coffee. Didn't ask a single question. It was Noreen who found me in the kitchen afterward, while I was stacking dishes. She leaned in close enough that I could smell her hand soap, and she whispered it like she'd been carrying it around all morning, waiting for the right moment. "Last night, around 11, I saw Gideon Hale standing outside Felix's door." She pulled back and looked at me with those sharp, unblinking eyes. And there it was. That charged look I'd caught between Felix and Gideon at dinner Friday night, the one neither of them acknowledged, the one I'd filed away and tried to talk myself out of. It wasn't nothing. It was never nothing. I thanked Noreen, kept my voice easy, went back to the dishes, but my hands weren't steady anymore. By early afternoon, I'd checked on Felix 3 times. Derek came with me on the last visit, pressed 2 fingers to Felix's wrist, lifted each eyelid with his thumb, and told me the same thing he'd told me that morning. Pulse steady, breathing unlabored, but the man was somewhere far away from us. "Whatever he got dosed with," Derek said quietly, "it was meant to keep him down a good long while." When Derek left, I stayed. I fished the key from my pocket, locked the door behind me, and stood alone in the middle of room 4 with my arms at my sides. I'd already seen the desk that morning, the cold chamomile tea, the provenance papers fanned out where Felix's arm had pinned them before we moved him to the bed. But I'd been rattled then, running on adrenaline and bad coffee. Now I made myself slow down the way I used to slow down when a claim file smelled wrong back in Albany. 30 years of actuarial tables and risk assessment. That was my whole career, and none of it was supposed to matter up here. But fraud is fraud. You don't find it by staring at what someone left in plain sight. You find it in the paperwork nobody wanted you to see. I went through the desk drawers first, reading glasses in a soft case, a tin of Altoids, a Kingston Book Fair brochure with 3 lot numbers circled in red ink. Nothing that told me anything I didn't already suspect. Then I lifted the blotter. The edge of an envelope, cream-colored, good stock, was wedged halfway beneath the leather, shoved there the way you'd hide something when a knock interrupted you. I pulled it free. My fingers weren't steady. The letter inside was handwritten in Felix's tight, careful cursive, and it was addressed to 2 initials. G.H. I had to read it, standing still, one hand braced on the desk. G.H. I have the full provenance chain for the Melville. The first edition Moby Dick you brokered in 2019 was stolen from the Alderman estate. I can prove it. The book is worth north of $200,000, and you knew exactly what you were selling. We need to talk before Kingston, or I go to the authorities. I read it twice. Then I folded it back into the envelope and slid it into my shirt pocket, right against my chest where I could feel its corners through the flannel. G.H. Gideon Hale. The man who'd sat at my breakfast table 4 hours ago and hadn't asked a single question about Felix. I found him in the library downstairs, settled into the leather wingback closest to the fire with a Peterson field guide open across his knee like he was waiting out a rain delay at a county fair. Snow ticked against the windows. The logs popped and shifted. He looked up when I came through the doorway, and I watched his face, the way I used to watch a claimant's face across my desk when the numbers on page 6 didn't match the numbers on page 2. "Gideon," I said, "I came across some initials in Felix's room. G.H." The field guide closed. His thumb held the page for a moment, then released it. "Sit down," he said. And then, like a man finally setting down a suitcase he'd carried too many miles, "Felix and I were partners. 5 years ago. Rare book trade out of the Hudson Valley." He told me about the falling out. Felix accusing him of knowingly selling a forged manuscript. The accusations that cratered their business and killed their friendship in the same stroke. He said he'd come to the lodge specifically because he knew Felix would be passing through on his way to the Kingston Fair. He wanted a private conversation, a chance to clear his name before Felix went to anyone official. "I knocked on his door Friday night," Gideon said. "Around 11. He wouldn't open it. I went back to my room." He looked me dead in the eyes. "I did not drug that man." Maybe he did. Maybe he didn't. I thought about Noreen seeing him in that hallway, about that look across my dinner table Friday night. I nodded like a man weighing it honestly, because part of me was. I filed every word he said and every word he didn't say, and I left the library without showing him the letter. I was still in the hallway turning it all over when Sadie appeared from the kitchen, holding a small amber glass vial between her finger and thumb like it was something dead. "Found this behind your spice rack," she said. "Way in the back, behind the cumin. No label. Half empty. Pale liquid, slightly viscous, catching the light when I tilted it." I took it from her carefully, sealed it in a Ziploc from my kitchen drawer, and felt something cold settle in my stomach that had nothing to do with the storm. Someone had been in my kitchen. My kitchen. Was it there at 5:30 this morning when I reached past the cumin for the cinnamon? Had I been 6 inches from it while I cracked eggs and a drugged man lay in his bed directly above me? That's when Biscuit started up. Not her usual neurotic yap, sharp, insistent barking aimed squarely at the cellar door, her whole small body rigid with conviction. Vivian hurried over and scooped her up, murmuring apologies. But the dog twisted in her arms, whining, straining back toward that door. I stared at it. Old pine, swollen in its frame from years of mountain damp. Nothing down there but ball jars full of preserves and furniture I'd been meaning to refinish since my second winter here. Nothing I knew about anyway. I stood at the top of those cellar stairs with Sadie's flashlight in one hand and my other palm flat against the door frame. And I listened. Biscuit had stopped barking by then. Vivian had taken her back to room 6. But the silence the dog left behind was almost worse. It was the silence of something waiting. The stairs complained under me the way old wood does when it's tired of holding weight. Each step pushed colder air up past my knees, my chest, my face, until by the time I reached the bottom, I could see my own breath curling in the flashlight beam. The cellar runs the full length of the lodge, fieldstone walls, poured concrete floor from when I had it redone in 2018, and about 40 years of accumulated furniture and forgotten things stacked along the edges. Dining chairs I'd replaced, a broken credenza, storm windows wrapped in moving blankets. The beam swept left, swept right, and then it caught something that wasn't mine. Tucked behind a stack of 6 ladder-back chairs, shoved back there deliberately, not casually, sat a leather attaché case, dark brown, brass hardware, expensive, the kind of thing that costs more than most people's luggage combined. I crouched down and pulled it out, and the leather was cold against my fingers. That's when I saw the monogram, stamped in gold near the clasp. 3 letters, NJP. I ran my thumb across them. My brain did what my brain does. It sorted. No guest had those initials. Not Gideon, not Derek, not Vivian, not Felix. Then it clicked, and my stomach went sideways. Noreen Jean Pratt. I opened the case right there on the cellar floor. Inside, wrapped in acid-free tissue paper, the kind conservators use, was a book. I didn't need to unwrap it fully. I could feel the binding, the weight of it. I peeled back just enough to see the title page. Moby Dick. First edition. The one from the Alderman estate. The one Felix's hidden letter said was worth over $200,000. Beside it, a prepaid cell phone, powered off, and a folded receipt from a self-storage facility in Poughkeepsie, dated 3 weeks prior. I closed the case. I carried it upstairs, and I waited until after dinner. Noreen was in the parlor with a glass of the Sancerre she'd brought herself, writing in a leather journal. She looked up when I walked in and set the attaché case on the ottoman between us. "That's not yours," she said. Cool. Automatic. "No," I said. "It's yours. NJP." "I don't know what that is." "Noreen, there's a first edition Melville inside it. There's a burner phone and a storage receipt from Poughkeepsie. I found it in my cellar, behind furniture nobody's touched in 2 years. Her face changed. Not all at once. It was like watching ice crack on a pond. The composure held for a moment, then a fracture line shot across it, and whatever she'd been performing since she checked in fell away. "I'm a food critic," she started, but she couldn't finish it. "You're a broker," I said, "for black market rare books. You were the middleman between Felix and a private buyer." She set the wine glass down and stared at it. Then she told me. Felix had the Moby Dick. He'd acquired it through channels she didn't elaborate on, but he was getting cold feet. Wanted to return it. A university library, she said, the rightful owner. Noreen came to the lodge under the cover of reviewing my breakfast to intercept the book before Felix could do something noble and costly. "But I didn't drug him," she said. "I came here to talk to him. Someone beat me to it." I stood there holding the attaché case, and a thought needled me. Felix's letter accused Gideon of brokering the stolen book. Now Noreen was confessing to the same role. Both of them couldn't be telling the whole truth. Maybe neither was. I'd locked the burner phone in my office desk before coming to the parlor. That phone had answers on it, answers I wasn't ready to share with anyone yet. "What's going on?" Derek's voice from the doorway. Sadie was right behind him. They'd heard enough. Noreen's eyes went wide, then flat. Derek cleared his throat. He looked at me, not at Noreen, and said something he'd apparently been sitting on all day. "I didn't think it meant anything at the time, but Friday night, late, past midnight, I saw Vivian Marsh coming out of the kitchen." The room went quiet. The fire popped once in the grate, and nobody moved. I was sitting on the edge of Felix's bed Sunday morning when his eyes opened. Not all at once. Slow, like a man swimming up through mud. His lips were cracked, his skin the color of old candle wax, and when he tried to speak, nothing came out but a dry rasp. I pressed a spoon of warm broth to his mouth the way you'd feed a sick child, and my hand shook so badly the liquid trembled in the bowl. 36 hours. 36 hours I'd been carrying the weight of maybe finding a dead man in one of my guest rooms, and now here he was blinking at me, alive, confused, and reaching for the toast like it was communion bread. I let him eat. I let him breathe. Then I asked. He confirmed everything I'd already guessed about the Moby Dick. Stolen property, acquired through channels he wouldn't fully describe. Years back when his conscience was apparently on sabbatical. He said the Kingston Book Fair was supposed to be his last stop. After that, he planned to anonymously return the volume to the university library it was taken from. A quiet act of atonement, no fanfare. Then he told me the thing that changed everything. "I made chamomile tea in the kitchen Friday night," he said. Casual, almost bored with himself. "Had my arms full of research papers. Vivian was down there, said she couldn't sleep. She offered to carry the cup upstairs for me." He shrugged like it was nothing, like kindness from a stranger didn't warrant a second thought. My blood went cold. 20 minutes later, I had them all seated in the great room. Noreen on the leather settee, arms folded, her jaw tight. Derek near the fireplace with Sadie tucked against him, both of them watching me like I was about to deliver a verdict. Gideon in the wingback chair by the window, fingers laced over one knee. And Vivian, last to arrive, carrying Biscuit against her chest like a shield. The snow was still coming down outside, but lighter now, softer. The county plows might reach Briarwood Road by Monday. I was running out of time, and I knew it, so I laid it out. "Vivian Marsh isn't your full name," I said. "It's Vivian Marsh Alderton, and in certain circles, rare book circles, private auction circles, that name carries weight. You're a collector, American Literary First Editions. You're not here for rest and mountain air." She didn't move. Biscuit squirmed in her arms. I kept going. Noreen already told me she was brokering a deal between Felix and a private buyer. Someone who wanted that Moby Dick badly enough to send a middleman to my lodge under the cover of a breakfast review. I looked at Noreen. Her eyes were fixed on the floor. She knew where this was headed. "That buyer was you, Vivian. And when Felix got cold feet, when he decided to return the book instead of sell it, you couldn't let that happen." I pointed toward the kitchen. "Derek saw you coming out of there Friday night past midnight. Felix just told me you offered to carry his tea upstairs. That's when you did it. In the kitchen. Whatever was in that amber vial, you put it in his chamomile, and you carried it up to him with a smile." The room was so quiet I could hear the logs settling in the fireplace. Vivian set Biscuit down on the rug, slowly, carefully. Then she folded her hands in her lap and looked at me, and her eyes were wet. It was a prescription sleep aid, she said. Her voice cracked on the last word. My own medication. I only wanted him to sleep so I could find the book. I searched his room and it wasn't there. I brought the attaché case to carry it out, and when I couldn't find it, I panicked and hid the case in the cellar. She pressed her fingers to her lips. I never meant to hurt him. You have to believe that. I didn't say whether I believed it or not. Felix had been unconscious for a day and a half. That fact hung in the air between us, unanswered. It was Gideon who broke the silence. Not with accusation, not with anger. He leaned forward in that wingback chair and spoke to Vivian in a voice so gentle it startled me. Obsession makes us do things we wouldn't recognize ourselves doing, he said. I understand that better than anyone in this room. Nobody asked him what he meant, but I watched his face, and I filed it away, because the letter Felix had written, the one accusing Gideon, was still sitting in my desk drawer right next to that burner phone, and neither one of them had been fully accounted for. Outside, the snow kept falling, the plows were coming, and with them, the world. Monday morning, the sound of diesel engines grinding up Briarwood Road was the most beautiful noise I'd heard in 3 days. County plow came through around 8:15, and the sheriff's cruiser was right behind it, chains on the tires, coffee steam curling out the cracked window. Deputy named Harlan, firm handshake, patient eyes. I liked him immediately. I handed him my written account before he even asked. 12 pages, front and back, every detail I could pin to a time and place. Old insurance adjuster habits die hard. I also handed over the burner phone I'd been keeping in my desk drawer and Felix's letter, the one that accused Gideon of things I never did get the full story on. Told Harlan I couldn't verify any of it, but it wasn't mine to hold on to anymore. He bagged both items without comment. Good man. Felix came downstairs on his own that morning, moving slow, one hand on the banister, but his color was better and his eyes were clear. When Harlan asked if he wanted to press charges against Vivian for the drugging, Felix was quiet for a long time, long enough that I thought he might say yes. Then he shook his head. She needs help, he said. Not a cell. Now, was part of that mercy also practicality? A man who'd been sitting on stolen property for years probably doesn't love the idea of a courtroom spotlight. I'm not naive, but I watched his face when he said it. And what I saw there was a man who was tired of carrying things, all kinds of things. What happened next is the moment I'll remember longest. Felix turned to Gideon, hadn't spoken directly to him in 5 years, far as I knew, and asked if he'd help arrange the Moby Dick's return to the university, through proper channels, legal ones. Gideon didn't hesitate, didn't posture, just stood up from that wingback chair, crossed the room, and extended his hand. Felix took it. They held that handshake for maybe 4 seconds. Didn't say a word, didn't need to. 5 years of silence and a stolen book about an obsession that destroys everything it touches, and 2 old partners standing in my great room deciding they were done being ruined by it. I had to look away for a second. Felt like I was watching something private. Noreen cooperated with Harlan fully. Gave names, dates, contacts from the brokering side. Smart woman. She knew the current was moving and chose to swim with it. On her way out, she stopped at the front desk, looked me dead in the eye, and said, "For what it's worth, your buttermilk pancakes genuinely deserve 5 stars. Regardless." I laughed. First real laugh in days. Derek and Sadie left next, arm in arm, already talking over each other about how they were going to tell this story at dinner parties for the rest of their lives. Hell of an anniversary trip. I wished them well and meant it. Vivian was last. She stood on the porch holding Biscuit against her chest, eyes red, voice small. Asked if I'd look after the cat while she sorted out her legal situation. I said of course. She nodded once, set Biscuit down at my feet, and walked to the waiting car without looking back. Then it was quiet. I stood on that porch with my coffee going cold and watched the last vehicle disappear down the freshly plowed road, taillights winking through the trees until there was nothing left but white mountainside and silence. The kind of silence that fills a room, fills a whole lodge, and presses against your ears. I came up here for a simple life. Fresh air, decent cooking, pleasant company. Instead, I got a mystery. Got liars and thieves and a woman who drugged a man's chamomile tea and an old accusation I'll never fully understand. Got Gideon's quiet comment about obsession that still sits in my chest like a stone I can't quite cough up. But standing there with the morning sun turning the snow into something blinding and beautiful, I realized something about myself. I'm pretty good at paying attention to people. Their hands, their voices, the things they don't say out loud. Maybe that's what running a bed and breakfast is really about. Not the pancakes, not the thread count. Just noticing. I reached down and scratched Biscuit behind the ears. She purred like a little motor. Then I went inside to start prepping tomorrow's breakfast. Because life goes on at the Pinecone Lodge. It just does.